Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Kent. I invite you to leave your daily concerns at the door so that you may be fully present for this time of sacred belonging. I'm Reverend Christy Anderson, and I serve this congregation as one of its two affiliated community ministers. I'm joined by Worship Associate Kathy Kearns, who is one of our two commissioned lay ministers. We extend a warm welcome to everyone, those in person as well as those on Zoom. And we offer a special warm welcome to visitors today. We're glad that you're worshiping with us and gathering as a spiritual community, aspiring to fulfill our church mission to inspire love, work for justice, and grow together in community. Today's worship service is enhanced by the work of accompanist Vanessa Vesley, guest musicians Benny Havanzik and Brad Bolton, our indispensable tech coordinator Julie Swango, Mary Beth Hannon, who prepared the slides, and last but not least, our greeters and social hour volunteers. We're grateful for all of you. I have one announcement this morning. You may have been aware that at 12:30 today here in Hobbs Hall, there was to be a program offered by the Wick Poetry Center. And unfortunately, the program has been canceled due to an emergency involving one of the performers. So stay tuned about future plans, but thanks to the Ohio Arts Council that supported this event, the food for the lunch that was to be held beforehand is here. So everyone is invited after the worship service to enjoy a light lunch. There is no cost for it, but there will be a Goodwill donation basket out. If you feel that you would like to donate, it will be split evenly between the church and the Wick Poetry Center. I hope you'll join us next week when worship leader Kathy Kearns and worship associate Randy Bish will offer a service titled A Spiritual Backpack for the Journey.
Who is turning 8 today.
And now I follow that. Thank you for setting us up. I grew up in Oklahoma, where talking to strangers is a normal, everyday experience. So imagine my surprise when I moved to Long Island, New York, and was confronted with a different expectation. I had worked as a grocery store clerk in college, and I thought I knew well the roles of customer and cashier, but my limited knowledge was revealed during my first visit to a New York grocery store. I greeted the clerk and offered some minor conversation. The clerk did not look at me or say a word until she was done ringing my groceries, when she told me what I owed. I remember vividly how uncomfortable I felt at what seemed to me a cold response. When I later relayed this story to a graduate student colleague who was from New York, she said, "That's just how New Yorkers are. They protect their personal space." Contrast this with my experience when I fly to visit family in Oklahoma. On every single trip, after we land, as we start leaving the plane, people start talking to one another. Every time. I end up chatting with at least one stranger, and I now recognize that I enjoy this. Somehow, I leave the plane feeling like I have already experienced an Oklahoma welcome. As I thought about this service, it caused me to reflect on why these casual conversations are important. Belonging is a universal social need. Of course, our close relationships with family and friends help fill this need. So why might strangers be important social partners? And how might our everyday contacts with strangers not only provide benefits to us, but also provide opportunities to live out our values? This service is an opportunity to reflect on these questions. Come, let us worship together. The chalice is a symbol of our Unitarian Universalism faith. We light a chalice to unite us in worship, to remind us of our search for truth and meaning, and to inspire us to live out our values. As Christy lights our chalice, I invite those on Zoom to light your home chalice. And please join me in reading our words of covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
As a spiritual community, we covenant to care for one another. In doing so, we take time during worship to embrace our church family and others in our lives for whom we care. Let us join together now in celebration of our joys and in solemn recognition of our sorrows and losses. I begin by inviting you to share your sorrows, losses, and concerns. For those on Zoom, use the chat box if you'd like me to read aloud that which weighs upon your heart. Mary Leeson shares the news that our member Becky Haynes is in the hospital. Let us join in a time of silence. This is a quiet time for prayer, reflection, or connection with the sacred mystery of life. Let us embrace stillness for a few moments. I call upon the spirit of love and life. We come here saddened by the catastrophic weather-related adversities occurring in this country and around the world. We pray that those impacted receive support and comfort. We pray that the abnormal weather patterns raise awareness about the urgency for environmental action. Let us also extend compassion and prayers to our brothers and sisters across the globe who are in need of healing, food and shelter, safety, and freedom. May we support them with our helping hands, generous hearts, and activist voices. We offer gratitude for this time of shared community and ask for blessings upon all gathered here. May we be empowered by the love and support of this community, whom we can freely call upon during troubling times. Let us lift up our hearts, hands, and voices, remembering that we are not alone and that together we can indeed make a difference. Amen. We have a chat that is a sorrow that Raven Luna Black Raven has shared with us, indicating that Raven will be having a PET scan on Wednesday and has asked for our thoughts and prayers. Life also brings us moments of joy. So those of you on Zoom, please feel free to share your joys on the chat box. We have a comment from Bob Erdman, who we all miss terribly, who's watching from Dayton. And Bob says, nice duet with Vanessa and Benny. Susanna shares a gentle gratitude that my aging father is content enough and frequently delights in life with chuckles and smiles. We're so glad that he's doing well, Susanna. Anyone else with a joy, maybe just a word or two, feel free to just express it. Happy birthday to Kiera. We miss her.
Beautiful weather.
It's beautiful weather.
Bubby's with us today from Cleveland.
Wendy has family here from Cleveland. Welcome. With gratitude for these and every blessing we receive in life, for the gift of life itself, and this day of possibility, we raise our hearts in gladness. Blessings be. Today's musical meditation is a video. It was created by a nonprofit group known as the Liberators. The Liberators are an international group of volunteers who work to bring strangers together to further global peace. They typically use music and spontaneous singing as a way to build human connections. They hold events on the same day across the globe involving thousands of people, hoping that international publicity will raise awareness of our shared humanity. They were very excited knowing that we were going to be showing this video today. This is a smaller project that they initiated. It's an experiment to see if connections can be made between strangers using nothing else but eye contact. I invite you to watch as people in urban areas were invited to sit down and spend 1 minute looking directly into the eyes of a stranger.
Our first reading is taken from an article by the BBC written by Emily Casriel. Imagine you die. You wake up in a world only made up of people you remember. All your old lovers, your boss, your grandmothers, and the waitress who served your food each day at lunch. It's a blissful opportunity to spend quality time with your 1,000 connections, to renew fading ties, to catch up with those you let slip away. It is only after several weeks of this that you begin to feel forlorn. You wonder what's different as you saunter through the vast quiet parks with a friend or two. No strangers grace the empty park benches. No family unknown to you throws breadcrumbs for the ducks and makes you smile because of their laughter. This scenario of a potential afterlife was envisioned by novelist and neuroscientist Daniel Eagleman in his short story, Circle of Friends, which he wrote over a decade ago. Eagleman told me there have been multiple shared readings of this tale about missing strangers during the COVID-19 pandemic. As we have retreated into the cocoons of our family and friends to stay safe, the glaring absence of those on the periphery of our lives has prompted more people to reflect on the significance of strangers. There is a growing body of research suggesting that engaging with and trusting people we don't know is important for our well-being and the well-being we encounter, of those we encounter, as well as the health of society. For example, friendly behavior to strangers has been linked to higher self-esteem in teenagers in the United States. In China, greater trust in strangers has been linked to better overall health. And in Canada, trust in strangers has also been correlated to individual well-being. In much of the developed world, people consistently overestimate the level of discomfort they would feel if they were to reach out to someone they don't know. For one day in June 2019, I hosted a BBC Crossing Divides on the Move Day with 8 UK public transport companies encouraging their passengers to strike up a conversation with a stranger. Posters and public announcements help give the passengers an excuse to reach out and strike up a conversation with a stranger. British people are famously reserved, but the researchers found that the Brits enjoyed talking to strangers just as our American participants did. Even if they expected to be happier in solitude or thought themselves introverts, the longer people had talked, the better they felt. I wonder how you feel about your own interactions with strangers.
I'm sure all of you have experienced meaningful connections with strangers. For most of us, this happens randomly. However, we can take steps to deliberately increase the odds of having these important bonding experiences. My role model for this is my husband, Brad. Brad loves people and values their unique stories. He's a living embodiment of this quote by psychologist Timothy Leary, who proclaims, "Who knows what you might learn from taking a chance on conversation with a stranger? Everyone carries a piece of the puzzle. Trust your instincts. Do the unexpected. Find the others." Brad takes to heart Leary's advice to find the others by actively seeking out opportunities to encounter strangers. When he's driving and sees unusual people who might reveal an interesting story, he'll go out of his way to stop and track down the stranger he passed by. You might say that he stalks strangers, and as a result, he's met fascinating people. They include a young man and woman who choose to live in their car, constantly on the road, surviving by taking odd jobs. A young man recovering from drug addiction, walking from Cincinnati to Cleveland with his dog. And a woman with her autistic son who walked from Boston to Portland and were on their way back to Boston when Brad stopped them to talk. Brad has interacted with a huge number of strangers in a wide variety of situations and has heard extremely interesting and heartfelt stories. My favorite stranger that Brad encountered on the road was a man in his 60s who was walking across all 48 continental states for the second time, carrying a sign that reads, "Love Life." This gentleman fascinated Brad so much that he brought this complete stranger to our home for 2 days and nights. It turned out to be an amazing and unforgettable experience for us. Similarly, if Brad is traveling by car and spots an intriguing building or yard, he stops, hoping for a photo and a chat with someone who knows the story behind the novelty that caught his attention. He doesn't hesitate, even when the oddities are on a residential property and the owner can visibly see him photographing their property. While Brad's enthusiasm is boundless, I'm sliding lower into the seat of the car, praying that the property owner doesn't come bursting out blazing weapons. Fortunately, the encounters have always been positive, with owners telling their story, proudly taking Brad on a tour, and willingly posing for pictures. Now, Brad is fortunate to be an older white male, as this provides him with a level of acceptance by others. Sadly, his bold approach could be dangerous for women, racial minorities, and trans people. So I'll share examples from Brad's adventures that are more down-to-earth and useful ways to mingle with strangers. One of his annual pilgrimages in search of conversant strangers is the pancake breakfast at Shalersville Township, a rural area in Portage County. He loves the fact that everyone sits together at long tables. He doesn't know a soul there, yet he always becomes engaged in meaningful conversations, often by asking questions that are far deeper than, "What do you think of the weather?" Recently, the Great Ohio Bicycle Adventure chose Kent as one of their overnight stops for their statewide biking tour. 1,500 bikers for 2 days at Fred Fuller Park. For Brad, it was a paradise of encounters with strangers. He put on his bicycling shirt and went to the park and downtown multiple times in search of interesting conversations with strangers. Brad epitomizes Leary's advice to find the other. Leary's second instruction is, do the unexpected. Leary's urging his readers to defy convention, stand out from the crowd by showing something unique about ourselves. Some of us may recall a former member of this church who exemplifies this. He drives a very recognizable van painted with colorful hippie symbols. He's sharing with the world something unique that he adores. And in turn, he delights in conversations with strangers that are prompted when they see his van. Brad collects unusual pins and likes to attach them to his favorite hats. The hats merely provide a wearable surface for holding a collection that has meaning for him. But as a side benefit, his odd assortment of pins prompts comments from strangers, which can kick off an interesting conversation. Some UUs entice conversation from others by publicly sharing what's on their minds with their bumper stickers. By revealing a bit of ourselves, whether through bumper stickers, wristbands embossed with words, or t-shirts with printed words, we're opening a door to our souls and inviting the world to respond. We've probably all heard anecdotes about people traveling and wearing a t-shirt that displays something about their hometown, such as Cleveland Guardians, Kent State University. Invariably, a stranger comes forward saying, "Hey, I see your shirt says." Then they relate how they have some association with whatever location or organization is on the t-shirt, and a conversation has unfolded. It seems that strangers really do want to connect, but often need a point of commonality to start the conversation. So I urge you, take a chance. Dare to radiate your unique self in a welcoming manner as a way to encourage strangers to converse with you. Creating opportunities to talk to strangers by seeking them out or by drawing attention to ourselves to prompt conversation can build human connections and enhance the well-being of ourselves and others. Yet I recognize that many of us are not comfortable being this bold. Fortunately, as we'll see, there are many ways that you can engage in meaningful interactions with strangers.
By nature, I can sometimes feel anxious talking to new people or those I don't know really well, and it takes a lot of energy for me to reach out to strangers. On our recent vacation, it was mostly my husband who initiated conversations with strangers we met during our travels. Yet I do like the sense of connection I often feel when talking to strangers and acquaintances as I go about my daily activities. I believe one reason our interactions with strangers are important is that they provide opportunities for us to feel seen and to see others. One day as I was boarding a plane, I paused when I got on, looked at the flight attendant who was greeting the arriving passengers and said, "Hi, how is your day going?" Her face registered surprise, then softened. She held my gaze and said, "Well, thank you." She seemed grateful to be acknowledged. After that exchange, I was embarrassed to realize I have been that person who usually rushes on the plane, focused on finding my seat and a place for my bag in the overhead bin, barely acknowledging the flight attendants. I now make a conscious effort to look at and greet flight attendants. They seem to feel better, and I feel better when I acknowledge their humanity. I think the reason I also value those interactions with other plane travelers who reach out to speak to me is that I feel seen. Opportunities to connect with strangers and acquaintances also feeds my sense of community, the feeling that I'm part of the larger human family. I live in Kent, and I enjoy living in a small town where I see familiar faces at the post office, grocery store, library, music concerts, political rallies, and of course, this church. We live in a world that seems to become more impersonal each day. We can bank, buy groceries, get gas, see a movie, arrange transportation, and in some places now, order food without ever speaking to another person. While this may be time efficient, it does not feed our basic human need to feel like we belong, are connected to a community. It is also worth considering how the lack of social interaction may be affecting our social fabric. People in the U.S. are more segregated than ever. We can go days and weeks at a time not talking to people who are different from us if we like. Yet speaking to other people who are different from us is a hedge against othering other people and responding to them only based on stereotypes. Our sixth principle encourages us toward the goal of world community. Creating world community means, to me, that we see ourselves as part of a larger human family. As we interact with strangers, every single time, we have the gift of an opportunity to create the type of world that we want to live in.
Kathy pointed out that engaging in the valuable work of interacting with strangers embodies our sixth principle. I additionally believe that impromptu conversations can breathe life into our first principle, which is our commitment to honor the worth and dignity of each human. Have you ever struggled to find the worth of someone you've encountered? Sometimes it can be a challenge. Initiating a conversation with a stranger can feel uncomfortable, especially if the stranger doesn't show any signs of friendliness. Yet by opening our hearts to people who don't appear friendly or approachable, we can more fully live our first principle. We're called to break down barriers, our own included. We embody our first principle when we're able to discover the humanity in someone who we might have prejudged to be aloof, too different, or uncaring. I'm working on initiating conversations with strangers who don't appear approachable. I have found that the best approach for me is to try to put myself into the shoes of the other. Here's a recent example where a simple statement I offered to a stranger made a meaningful difference. On a Monday in June, I was confronted with a very last-minute need to send a package that absolutely had to arrive at its destination the next day. I raced to get the box ready and drive to a Federal Express location before the 5 p.m. truck was scheduled to depart. Traffic was barely crawling. I arrived feeling stressed as there were only 7 minutes to spare. The FedEx truck was sitting in front of the store with the engine running and the packages on its loading ramp. Inside the store, there were 2 package processing stations, but only one was open, and it had a line of impatient customers. Everyone seemed grumpy, from the customers to the clerk. The device that the clerk was using to scan the packages was powering off and on unpredictably, causing processing delays. At 2 minutes to the hour, as I was last in line, I finally reached the counter. Then the clerk's scanning device stopped working altogether. With a look of exasperation, the clerk gave up and escorted me to the other processing station. On the way, I said to her sympathetically, "I hope it hasn't been this hectic for your entire day." She stopped in her tracks, looked straight in my eyes, and then I could actually see her tense body relax. She responded with a sigh, "We never expected a day like this. It's the first time that the Juneteenth holiday has fallen on a weekday. People didn't realize that this is a postal holiday. Customers are arriving here after discovering that the post office is closed. They rush in frustrated and angry about making an extra trip. We were totally unprepared for the number of customers, and the equipment's failing. It's been a horrible day." I said sincerely, "I hope the remainder of your day gets better." She began to process my package and noted that it was covered in brown paper. I explained that all I had was an Amazon box, and I wasn't sure if FedEx would accept it with an Amazon logo on it, so I covered the entire box with mailing paper. She explained to me that FedEx doesn't accept packages covered with paper. I knew that there wasn't time for me to repackage the item, and my face surely revealed my dismay. She smiled at me and said, "I have an idea." With lightning speed, she juggled and flipped the package while covering every square inch of it with transparent tape. It looked like a job performed by an exuberant 4-year-old who had just discovered adhesive tape for the first time. Beaming, she said, "I will personally hand this to Robert. He'll take it." I had witnessed a transformation. A weary, emotionally detached worker revealed her personable and caring inner being. All it took was my simple recognition and acknowledgement of her stressful situation. She was apparently touched that I lifted up her humanity and made her feel she had been seen. In turn, she let down her guard, which enabled her to step outside of her ego and recognize my distress. Now, I acknowledge that taking the risk of speaking to someone who appears detached doesn't always bring the results we desire. But when our intervention does succeed in drawing out the better nature of someone, we've bestowed a bit of kindness upon a world in need of more kindness, and we've moved closer to our aspirations as Unitarian Universalists. Each of us has the capacity to bring out the best in other people. I'm sure you're doing it already. My hope in highlighting this today is that you'll be inspired to be more intentional and assertive as you shine your inner light and ignite the spark in others. Writer James Baldwin eloquently reminds us, "The longer I live, the more deeply I learn that love is the work of mirroring and magnifying each other's light. It's life-saving work in those moments when life and shame and sorrow obstruct our own light from our view. But there is still a clear-eyed, loving person to beam it back. In our best moments, we are that person for another." Let us practice beaming our inner lights at today's social hour. Take a chance. Talk to someone you don't know. If you feel uncomfortable starting a conversation, simply walk up to someone and say, "Hi, I'm just following Christy's instructions. How would you like to start the conversation?" I'm predicting that if you shine your inner light, others will shine theirs back. I can assure you that the more you make the effort, the easier it becomes. So let us go forward, living our faith by magnifying the warm glow of love within us, between us, and among us. May it be so.
Victoria Weinstein reminds us, Unitarian Universalist congregations are entirely self-governed by democratic process. One of the privileges of our free church tradition is to provide all of the financial support for our many ministries from among ourselves. Generosity, therefore, is one of the spiritual values we recognize as central to our personal and our institutional well-being. You are now invited to participate in the blessing of giving as the ushers come among you to accept the gifts of the congregation. In addition to contributing to our church's ministries, you also have the opportunity to contribute to this month's special offering. Our July special collection will be for the Immigrant Worker Project. The Immigrant Worker Project works for justice and human dignity for rural immigrant workers from Latin America who live in Ohio. Any undesignated offerings will go to the special collection. And now the offering will be gratefully received.
I added lyrics to a Russian folk song, and the chorus is pretty easy. I think the song will sound familiar to you. So the lyrics are going to be, for the chorus, are going to be on the screen, and I invite everyone to join in singing. Once I joined a church in Kent, Ohio. Folks gathered here are known as UUs. Drinking fair trade coffee with vegan milk. We pray, we sing, we preach about the news. These are the days, my friends, we know we're on the mend. We'll sing and talk forever and a day. We'll live the faith we chose despite our budget woes. For we are strong and sure to find a way. La 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 la. For we are strong and sure to find a way. We have no doctrine, creed, or holy books. Our bumper stickers show just where we stand. Few Bible verses, we quote Harry Potter. For justice, we all give a helping hand. These are the days, my friends, we know we're underfoot. We'll sing and talk forever and a day. We'll live the faith we chose despite our budget woes. For we are strong and sure to find a way. La 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 la. For we are strong and sure to find a way. When money and resources raised a worry, folks talked and talked and talked for weeks on end. When all ideas had finally been presented, we worked it out, our church we will defend. These are the days, my friend, we know we're on the mend. We'll sing and talk forever and a day. We'll live the faith we chose despite our budget woes. For we are strong and sure to find a way. La 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 la. For we are strong and sure to find a way. As we bring this service to a close, I'll extinguish the chalice and invite you to say in unison the words found on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. May we carry these in our hearts and minds until we are together again. If you're able, I invite you to stand for our closing hymn. This little light of mine has many different verses besides those in the hymnal. I've added an extra verse that I heard on a Sam Cooke recording. I don't know if he or someone else wrote the verse. We'll sing the first 3 verses from the hymnal, add the new one, and then repeat the first. The words are on the screen and in your order of service. These words are by the feminist writer and activist L.R. Nost. Do not be dismayed by the brokenness of the world. All things break, and all things can be mended, not with time, as they say, but with intention. So go, loving intentionally, extravagantly, unconditionally. The broken world waits in darkness for the light that is you. Go forth radiating the light of your love. Blessed be. Namaste.